Hey everyone, very excited to have Bianca here today. Bianca Gates, co-founder of Birdies. Bianca is one of those founders who I've admired from afar for a very long time. As somebody who ran a brand myself and never hit even like a thousandth of the heights that Birdies has hit. And it's just a pleasure to be able to spend time here. So Bianca, thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I've never done a live podcast, so we'll see where this goes.
We can swear, it's LinkedIn, so it's kid safe.
Okay.
I'll try not to, too bad. But yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Aaron, one of the co-founders of Orita. We do AI customer segmentation. None of this is about Orita. This is all about Bianca and her journey. So let me start by Bianca, just asking you for like a proper intro to yourself and your background, even before Birdies. Would love to hear a little bit more about you and how you even got into the space.
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California. My parents are immigrants from Latin America. My mom was born and raised in Bolivia. My dad was born and raised in Argentina, and they met, fell in love, got married a month later, and decided that they would take the leap and move out of South America and to the United States. And shortly thereafter, they had me, and I'm the oldest of four kids. My dad is a college professor, and my mom was very much dedicated to raising her family. And she did not speak any English when she first moved here. So I think assimilating pretty quickly into the culture and the language while raising a family was her, big priority. So I think a lot of that sort of shaped who I became, just seeing immigrant parents taking risks, being curious, asking the right questions, persevering, watching them struggle, watching them thrive. And so I think for me, it just unlocked this sense of curiosity and this ability that like if you work hard you also can build and grow over time. The question is like, where do you want to build, where do you want to grow? And there was this pivotal moment I'll never forget when I was about 8 years old, and we were sitting for breakfast before school, and my parents had this like rectangular table in the kitchen, and my dad always sat at the head of the table, and my mom was on one side, and then the four kids around it. And every morning the sun would rise, and my dad's back would be there, and we would all be kind of blinded. And so one day I just said, like, Dad, like, why do you always get to sit there while the rest of us have to suffer through, the sun? And it was, a random question, but I was just kind of curious why he got to choose that seat. And he just looked at me dead in the eyes and he just said, whoever makes the money gets to choose where they sit. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And, he said that to my siblings as well, but I don't think that they grasped onto it as much as I did. And that sort of became my identity. At that moment, I was like, I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to choose my seat. People are going to hear me. I'm not just going to sit on the side. And that just motivated me to just build this career independently the next 30 years, 40 years, because I wanted so desperately to have a voice and to pick my seat at the table. So those are kind of like the origin of sort of where, I think that sort of led me to where I am today.
Man, that is wonderful. Wait, just one quick question. You mentioned your dad's a professor. What does he teach?
He teaches finance. He teaches he teaches finance at
Okay.
Cal State Dominguez Hills. He retired, but he did that
Very
for
cool.
many decades. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so neither of my parents,
that's fair.
were in the business world. I had a wonderful stay-at-home mom and a dad who was an educator, and so I had to figure out how to navigate corporate America sort of on my own, and I think that's when I realized very early on that finding the right people to surround yourself with that are like-minded and have the same passions and goals as you do is going to be critical to your success because we can't do it alone.
That it must have been like both energizing and inspiring, but also like very stressful for you to always feel like, okay, like, there's some scoreboard that you're playing against. Like, how is that helpful? And how is that kind of like make things frankly, like more difficult or harder for you personally throughout the journey?
I think for me, I'm motivated by that. I mean, I had a career in sales. You're only as good as your last quarter. And every quarter you're trying to beat, the revenue from that quarter. And so for me, it was like a sport and I've always loved it. But I recognize it's not for everybody keeping that scoreboard and trying to outdo what you did last year. I mean, for many years when I started working and I moved to New York and I was in media and I was doing sales, every year I wanted to beat my W-2. And as a salesperson, you have a base salary, but you can always comp higher depending on, the sales that you bring in. And so for me, having a bigger W-2 than I did the year before was sort of like the way I could keep track of, am I spending my time in the right places? Am I doing the right things? And that for me was my metric for success for many years.
And then, so you were at Meta for a while. I mean, Facebook at the time, right? On
Facebook.
that,
I
on that
can't call it Meta. Oh,
I know it's very hard. A lot of my network is like split between the two and I don't know who to, yeah. So
Yeah. I think if you were there before it was Meta, I think we should call it Facebook. And if you were there while Meta, then call it Meta. But yeah, I mean, from Southern California, I lived at home during college. I went to UC Irvine. My parents, still had that Latin, culture where their daughters don't move out of their homes until they're married. And so the only universities I could choose from were colleges that I could, drive to or take the bus, which I did. So I lived at home all those 4 years, and then I was just desperate to spread my wings. And I had this belief that business people lived in New York City because I didn't see many business people in Orange County where I grew up. So made the journey to New York, having never lived there, got a job in advertising sales. I worked at Univision. So I took advantage of me speaking Spanish and trying out sales. And I loved it. I loved sales. I loved media sales. I then went to MTV Viacom. The head of sales from Univision went to become the head of sales at MTV Viacom. He took me with him. And that's around the time I met and fell in love with my now husband, Jackson, who was in New York at the time and going to business school out west. And so over many years, we dated, we got engaged, we got married. And ultimately, he really felt like he needed to be in San Francisco for professional reasons. Me being curious, I was like, let's give it a try. So I left New York. And I think, when I moved to San Francisco, I realized media was not the biggest industry here. And I wanted to work within an industry that was predominantly in the area I lived in. I also knew that I did not want to work at a satellite office. I wanted to work at the headquarters. And in 2011, I read this commencement speech that Sheryl Sandberg had given at Barnard College. I was like so inspired by her and her words and her lean in philosophy. And so at that moment, I was like, I need to work for this woman. I've never met her. I have no business working at Facebook. It's a big tech company. I knew nothing about it, but I was determined to go work at this company that she was ultimately running the sales side of it. It took me 6 months to get the job. I was not the natural profile, but I got the job, and being there honestly just changed my life in so many ways.
That's so wonderful. And I have like 40 follow-up questions there, but I need to find a way to bring this back to Birdies. And you and I will have a separate discussion about your career there. You're an amazing salesperson, obviously. Like, you are so thoughtful, so polished, like all the things, right? And you've obviously put in the work. You then start Birdies. Like, what are the skills that you brought from your career in sales, right? Or your career just like being so successful at Facebook that like deeply translated? So I'm not talking about like what was the inspiration for Birdies, but literally
Yeah.
for you as an operator, like what did you bring forward and what did you maybe have to leave behind?
Well, okay. So I started Birdies in 2015 when I was still at Facebook. I didn't leave Facebook until 2017. So a lot of people don't know that this was really just a side hustle project. And when I say that Facebook changed my life, I mean, I think just like the culture of how people were solving problems, how they thought about problem solving, how they thought about the future, how they thought about leveraging technology to scale solutions for people. And then my time with Cheryl, who just opened my eyes to this concept of community and leaning in. And all those things just sort of like just started to shape 2.0 version of Bianca. I mean, I think like sales has probably been the biggest thing that I could have brought to Birdies. I'm not a product designer. I can't even sketch. I've never managed a person in my life prior to starting Birdies. I really didn't bring any skill sets other than I was able to sell people on this vision of a social slipper. And I was able to articulate it in a way that people were like, this girl's nuts, but I don't know, maybe there's something there. Let's help her out. And so I had a lot of people in the early days help make introductions, connections to suppliers, to designers. I sold my co-founder, who was my co-founder for 10 years. She was a smarty pants, Cornell undergrad, Wharton MBA, worked in management consulting, like the opposite of me. But I was able to convince her to take this leap of faith, to leave the corporate world and join me on this journey. And so I think so much of Birdies was just me being able to sell and articulate the vision and get people excited about building with me. I don't think I have many other skill sets, to be honest.
I think a little bit of determination adds up when you're founding the business
Yeah.
and all that too.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I think sales is one of the most critical things. You're selling people to work with you. You're selling investors on the vision to believe in you. I mean, you're selling the vision to consumers to buy your product. I mean, it's really so much of it is sales.
A sense of what I get also from how you described it is inspiring people to help. I think one of the things having been like an investor and advisor in way too many companies, that I tell every single founder is like, just over communicate what your issues are and what you're struggling with and what problems you're really trying to solve. I think people are very cagey and are like, well,
Yeah.
if I talk about this, I'll look bad. Or if I talk about it, they might copy my idea. And it
Right.
feels like you're very much on I want everybody to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I want to get them inspired and also like pull in resources that you didn't even know, like you don't know what you don't know type of situation.
100%. When I hear people talk about stealth mode, I'm like, well, that's an uninvestable concept right there because it's not about the idea. I mean, we weren't the first people to create shoes or indoor outdoor shoes. The components are not, we didn't reinvent the wheel of footwear. It was just a new way of thinking of it and executing. And by the way, like the vision for Birdies took a big hard pivot 2 years into it because it turns out that this vision, this dream, this idea that I had that women were now going to be the hostess with the mostess, wearing birdies for the entertaining space of their home was a disruptive idea. Turns out it was kind of a terrible idea, but it got people thinking about birdies and loving the brand story so much that they wanted to buy the shoe, but they wanted the shoe to be a shoe to be worn outside, not inside. And for us, that was the big pivot we had to make in 2018.
How did you make that pivot? Like, was that a supplier? Was it literally just a positioning pivot or like what else had to change at the time?
Well, so my co-founder and I each invested $50,000 to start the business in 2015, which is, in hindsight, not a lot of money to start a footwear company where you can't just make the products here in the US, see if it lands, and then, keep building. You have to go overseas. And overseas, the factories have minimums. And so the factory we found had an 1,800 unit minimum, which basically was all of our money. And when we got the shoes at the end of 2015, when we launched, the quality was not great. We didn't have enough money to buy half sizes, but these were like loafers that you had to fit perfectly or you'd fall out of. So we only had full sizes. I mean, it was kind of a disaster. And when we received the product, I was like, oh my God, turns out I really don't know what I'm doing. This was fun while it lasted. So the idea was, let's just sell all 1,800 pairs of these to our literally combined 1,800 Facebook friends, capture our money, and let me go back to my day job at Facebook, which is a great job. What happened though is we ended up getting a lot of media attention when we launched. We had friends who had friends at, magazines and other places that were writing about the social slipper. And so people became curious. We had celebrity stylists reaching out, wanting these social slippers for their celebrities. And so we sold through them pretty quickly. And by middle of 2016, I was like, I'm not doing this again. This is crazy. But we had also gained visibility within the industry. So we had a factory reach out to us that makes shoes for a very well-known brand and said, would you be willing to work with us? And I was like, would I? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, the factory we worked with is not great. I had to play it cool, but at the same time be like, okay. So when I was ready to wrap things up in 2016, I was like, well, maybe there's another chance here. Let's work with these guys. They're very credible. And so they designed and manufactured Birdies 2.0 that we launched with in the fall of 2016. That product was so much better. We had more colorways. And at that point, we were like, whoa, this is like kind of working. And in early 20s, had investors reaching out saying, this is an amazing concept. My wife loves the product, or I am an investor, love the product. I want to invest. And so that was in middle of 2017 when I just thought I can't keep doing my full-time job at Facebook and take people's money to run a company. So I have to make a decision and pick one or the other.
One of the things from even that shift to like getting to the Birdies 2.0, right, is it feels like you're very good at listening to the market.
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, we have a vision, we're going to be dogged, we're just going to do it. Like that is a piece of it.
Yeah.
But it actually seems like you're willing to like truly pick your head up and just like see the patterns. Is that something that
Yeah.
has continued throughout the journey, or is that like kind of you got very lucky that the right factory at the right time when you were not exhausted, right, and were able to hear that there was something there? Or how does that kind of influence everything?
Here's the other thing is like, I'm not a designer. So for me, it's not like I'm like, this is what I want to make and nothing else. And like, like this is my vision and like screw people if they don't like my vision. Like I want to build a company. So if the customer is telling us this is a crappy product or this doesn't work for me, I'm like, all right, well, let me figure out what does work for you so we can scale and build a company. So when we raised capital in 2017, Forerunner Ventures, led that round, Kirsten Green, who's an amazing investor and she's become a good friend. She loved this idea of this, like, this new type of slipper. The slipper business had not been disrupted in a long time. And so she saw the vision. I think where the challenge was, and so we raised a couple $1 million, we hired some people, we were really scaling fast. And in later that summer, we started to see a lot of returns and customers were very upset. And I was like, this is weird. Like, this has never happened. So we hired an intern in the summer of 2018, and her job was to email our thousands of customers and ask them, like, how are you wearing your birdies? Because the biggest feedback was that these shoes were disintegrating pretty quickly. They were falling apart. I was like, that can't be possible. I'm not going to argue with the customers, but I wear mine every day. Like, this is not true. At the end of the summer, she presented her findings, and it turns out that over 75% of our customers were wearing these as shoes everywhere, traveling, to lunch, to brunch, to running errands. And I was like, well, there's the problem. We need to come up with a marketing campaign to educate our consumers on how to wear these shoes. And this young woman, she must have been, 21. She was a sophomore in college. She says to me, or we can pivot and we can add a thicker outsole and really follow the customer's lead. And I was like, that's crazy. But I don't care about the footwear industry. There's so many shoe options out there. What do I have to offer to compete within this massive market? And at the same time, I was like, if I want to build a massive business, the TAM is much larger in all footwear than just in this like social slipper shoes. We belabored this for a long time, my co-founder and I, back and forth. Do you stay focused on the problem you're solving? That was the magic of Birdies, the social slipper, or do you evolve into what the customer is saying that they want from you? And so right after, we were starting to make those tough decisions, we had another big investor come in and want to lead the Series A, investing about $8 million in the Series A. And that investor said, I am only investing if this is a broader footwear, comfortable footwear brand, not a slipper shoe. So I was like, well, the customers want it as a shoe. Investors are seeing the opportunity in the footwear market. So let's do it. And so later that year, I ended up having to find the owner of birdies.com because we were birdieslippers.com for many years. I was able to buy that for like, $20. And I couldn't figure out who owned birdies.com. And like, I just knew if we were going to be a much bigger company beyond just slippers, we needed to change our domain, but I loved Birdie. And as relentless as I am, I found the owner and negotiated a bit. And that was a wild ride, I would say. But we ultimately ended up getting birdies.com and we reintroduced that domain name at the end of 2018.
I love it. Bianca, I've never talked to somebody who has like kind of the same journey as I've had in a way that like even how you describe
Tell
it,
me.
I'm getting goosebumps. And it's like, I mean, you obviously crushed it. We like, did not. So I should be
I want to hear your journey. Because I like being around people that understand my.
Yeah, this is interesting. I'll be quick, but basically out of business school, I went to business school to start a business. I thought startups were, you get a Subway franchise, you spit out cash, you get a laundromat, you spit out cash, right? And that turns out I went to Berkeley, did my MBA, and it was like, oh, right, there's high tech startups. And I just like didn't grow up around it, didn't know anything about it. I'm just a kid from Cleveland. And yeah, I started a business during school that was terrible. It was 4 MBAs, no engineering, a sustainability business. And then after school, a buddy and I started a watch company. And it was meant to be a 3-month project. Like really 3 months. He ended up honoring that, went to get a job, eventually bought a house, like did the good thing. We launched watches as quickly as we possibly could. They were interchangeable. And then like we sold $60,000 of watches to Google and $40,000 of watches to Facebook. Like the Facebook holiday gift for the 7th anniversary were our watches in like 2011 or I think.
Yeah.
And then I like called my parents. I was like, yep, I'm just going to go run this company. I'd never worn a watch. Like I got a watch for my bar mitzvah and I lost it. Like I wasn't passionate about watches, but how you described it, I always say I'm interested in the business of business. Like I like building a team. I'm a terrible manager, but like I love creating jobs. I love like solving hard problems. I like understanding what customers really want and then listening and be like, oh, can we do this better?
Yeah.
And so even how you talked about that intern being like, or we could listen to our customers and flip. We used to write handwritten notes to every single customer, like not like a thing you order, but like with my cell phone number was in there. So I was like, I will create any opportunity for you to tell me why we're wrong.
Yeah.
And then we pivoted our business so much because of that. I think that it's interesting because like you said, you weren't like a passionate footwear like you might have loved footwear, but you weren't the designer. It was the same for me as I was like, okay, I'm not bringing any preconceived notions of what this product
Right.
should be.
Yep.
Do you think that ever got you in trouble? Like, were you guys moving too quickly on changing stuff? Or is it like you actually had an amazing co-founder as well and you like had enough momentum and investors were kind of like that willingness to move things was actually contained a little bit?
I had my co-founder was amazing. Like I said, she was the yin and my yang. I think, one of the hardest things when you're listening to your customers is like, some of them can be real jerks, and like this is your brainchild. And so it's like you're opening yourself up to reading, some are like good criticisms and you're like, wow, this is helpful. But some of them are like so nasty and that's really hurtful. And I got to the point where I had to separate myself. I needed somebody to compile it as data because if there was a name associated, and God forbid it was like a friend of mine who at the time, it wasn't, Bianca at Birdies email customer service. We created a fake customer service alias, but it was all coming to us. And, sometimes I see my friends' names and I'm like, oh my God. Or, people like really hate us or, like we're like the bottom feeders. Like we're disgusting. Like
Bianca,
it
you were
was
ruining
so
Christmas. Don't you know this?
I
That
was
like
ruining
literally
Christmas. I
every
mean,
year.
we like literally like during shipping cutoff, people were not getting their shoes on time. We had supply chain challenges and like these emails that like I had literally ruined their holidays. And so I had to take a step back and just have somebody else synthesize the data, the qualitative data, and just give me the quantitative data. Just like what are the sheer numbers, remove the emotion from it because it was really affecting my mental health, my co-founder's mental health. And so we had to build sort of a barrier, but also be open to the feedback, but more in a qualitative sense. The quant stuff, we had to separate ourselves from a little bit.
Man, it's so interesting. It has been
Even now, when you read a bad comment on social, I mean, during COVID, when people were just like, everybody had a voice on social media. I mean, people would come after me. And of course, there were all these like great things, but there were also some negatives. And we got very wrapped up in the 2020 election. We created this amazing, vote collection shoes to encourage women to go out and vote. We were not trying to choose a side. We weren't choosing a side publicly. We were just encouraging women to vote. And oh my gosh, the hate that we got as part of that, it reached a fever pitch during COVID. And I had to have a thicker coat of arms because it can be debilitating to be on the receiving end of negativity like that.
yeah. I mean, I never felt it kind of like around such a hot button issue as like I'm kind of projecting and imagining, but even just like the small ones hurt, especially when you're putting your all into serving. The same thing, by the
Yeah.
way, happens on the commerce enablement side, right? So 2017, like the watch company was still running, but it was kind of on ice for a couple of years, and I switched more to commerce tech. And it does feel good not to ruin holidays, but the like pain I feel when one of our customers, and our customers serve 100,000 or a million or 10 million of their consumers,
Yeah.
is like, I can't get out of the whole cycle of like the customer is always right. And I
Yeah.
don't mean like I want to get out of it, but the empathy you feel, I think by having been a brand owner is
Yeah.
just like a level deeper.
Totally. Totally.
We'll have a therapy session jointly later. This has been really helpful for me. So thank you.
Yeah.
I do like you guys have had amazing success, right? And you scaled it and now like you've sold the company, or I don't know how you define it, like if it's private equity, so it's like investment, but whatever it is. What's changed for you in the last little while? And like, how has this felt for you? Do you feel like you're still in the weeds? Are you like arm's length? Is it still your baby? I don't know. I'm curious for that journey over the last little while.
You mean since post-acquisition?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
how's it? Yeah.
It's been really interesting, I think, and eye-opening for me. The acquisition, in many ways, for me, it was just like this opportunity to really beef up areas of the business that we could use more help with. So we were bought by a private equity firm, but they had purchased a footwear conglomerate with 3 other footwear brands. So now we're the 4th. And so some of the biggest offerings they had is they have offices all over Asia. So on the production side, the quality control side, the supply chain side, that was very valuable. We didn't have that at Birdies. We had only raised $14 million, which, seems like a lot of money, but you see other footwear brands in the Bay Area that launched around the same time who had raised hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So we were competing for share of mind, share of heart, share of wallet, but we didn't have a as robust of an infrastructure as some of our competitors did. So they offered that shared services, like one HR group, one finance team. You don't need to have duplicates. Those were the benefits that I really saw. We would be able to scale a lot faster. We also own our shipping warehouse, so not having to lean on a 3PL anymore, and which is expensive. And so I agreed to stay on. And I think, like, with all of those great things, there's also challenges, right? Like, I am used to making all decisions, which at some point you hate. You're just like, God, isn't there somebody else that can make these hard decisions? And at the same time, it's like, wow, I'm like part of a bigger organization. I wouldn't do it this way. And I can share that, but ultimately it's not my call. And those are, I think, like really frustrating challenges for me that I'm trying to navigate, working with others. So I think it's been good and also challenging. I forgot what it's like to work within a bigger organization. I think working with, private equity is very different than venture folks. And that's been a learning curve for me as well. So, again, like in the scheme of just leaning in and being curious, I've been learning a lot this year, but it's definitely felt different.
I mean, I think this is a natural progression for most brands, right? It is very, very hard to imagine generic brand X, no matter how good they are on Shopify, becoming a public company, which means it's ultimately like, how do you go find the best home where you're losing some, obviously the flexibility, but you get the resources, the assets to go
Right.
build.
Yeah.
When you think about the Birdies journey, I'm very curious, like, and I want to abstract a little bit from like what you guys went through. From imagine you're advising me, I'm a brand founder, I've got 10 million in revenue, so like I'm a real business. Think about the ecosystem today. How much do you think brand owners should be thinking omni-channel, or should they be staying D2C and very aggressively D2C? And
Yeah.
then secondarily, I'll go into like the tech world and like how AI, but I'll save that for a little bit. But curious, like, how do you think about like omni-channel strategy?
This has been debated many years. D2C was like the only way. And then it was like, oh no, well, let's pivot back into wholesale. I mean, I think the reality, at least for footwear, most footwear purchases still happen in person. There's just fit issues. People's feet are different. So I think getting to an omni-channel distribution strategy is going to be key at some point. I think it's just, my background was more in D2C and e-commerce. So we started there. No, but I think where most of the attention needs to be on right now is the quality of the product. And this is where I start to think about, like AI. My consumer behavior lately is I just go to ChatGPT and I ask it like, what hotel should I stay at if I'm going to XYZ city? What do you think about this? Can you help me with that? I mean, I'm really leaning on it for assistance, and also understanding that it can scrape the internet for the information within seconds and give me a succinct overview. And so as I'm thinking about like my own behavior, I start to think about like, how do I apply that as a consumer for my shopping behavior? If you were to type in, you know, what do people think about Birdies shoes? And I've done that. And it gives me, the pros and the cons. And I'm like, wow, I could have spent a lot of money getting, consumer surveys done, or just real quickly, like, here's what we got to fix and fast. So I think just having the highest quality product now is going to be more important than the biggest marketing buzz that is just kind of like smoke and mirrors that people were buying into. I think now customer reviews are going to be the thing that drives businesses. And so being very focused on having the best possible product, and with some marketing, of course, but the whole like LTV to CAC is like less of a keeping me up at night as much as just what are people saying about the product.
Is what are people saying about the product very much heard in terms of like, hey, look, at the end of the day, quality will win in a world where like there's perfect information. Is as much of that about like, you guys are thinking much more about your retention rate and your repeat purchase rate and your referral rate? Like, are there things you're doing to kind of instrument those things? Or is that just kind of like naturally like following what we just discussed?
So at Birdies, our 70% of our revenue comes from repeat. So we have a pretty good business. We're thinking more about like new customer acquisition. I would love to see more of like a 50-50 split between, repeat customers and bringing new customers into the funnel. And so we have a lot of work to do with new customers who may have heard about us but are unsure, who might be going to ChatGPT to say, hey, listen, should I make this purchase or not? The customers that we've already had, they know us, they love us. But why are other people not buying us? And what are some of the tools that they're using to decide whether they're going to try us out or not. And I do think that something like a chat GPT is going to be the thing that makes them curious and want to try or not try. Right now, we need to preserve the quality of the product because we can make a lot of noise. And I'm pretty good at that, at the marketing and the social media. I'm pretty good at that. But if ultimately people are complaining about the product and they're out there saying, it's not great, or it's amazing, then ultimately like the upper funnel has to align with the lower funnel, the product. And because, I think I spend a lot of my time naturally on the things that I love, which is more marketing and social media. I think it's really paying attention to the product that's going to, I think, be incredibly important beyond distribution. Just customer reviews, I think, are going to be the biggest factor moving forward.
But are there things you're doing to kind of instrument those, or are there any tools, again, like more tactically? And if the answer is you're not sure, that's also great. But like specifically, you're talking to that next brand founder, like are there specific reviews, tools that you guys love, or tactics that you're taking to try to get people to actually put in that work? What you were talking about with AEO is something that is like continuing to pop up. And I think at the end of the day, everybody who's thinking about instrumenting this, I'm not talking about tech companies, I'm talking B2B, but literally from a brand side, it's like going back to the core of what you said, which is like great product. Plus, I think figuring out a way to get your customers to actively discuss it, like, use a reviews platform like Junit or whatever you use, just making sure that there's like not BS user generated content, but really useful content that tells people what is the situation where this works, or how does the new style feel, or how does it fit, to me is actually like the urgent thing for brands to do.
Totally.
So
Absolutely.
sorry. Yeah.
Well, listen, even like, we're starting to test on Amazon a little bit. And just again, my own behavior when I'm searching for something and it says this one is top rated or this one has like, 10,000 reviews. I'm like, I'm going to go there versus the one that has like 4 reviews. I have no idea, what I'm getting. And so I think it's just like monitoring our own behaviors now, and reviews absolutely matter. And to your point, there are a lot of tools that we can use. And I think we have like 60,000 5-star reviews on our Black Velvet Sterling, which is great. But what about people that are just talking on the internet, not tagging us so we can't follow up with them? And like, what's that chatter looking like? I think that's something that maybe like a ChatGPT AI platforms can aggregate now and give me the real picture of what people are saying.
Do you think this is the type of thing where brands should be doing this type of work in-house, right? It's kind of like, I always think back to the Gap was magnitudes, right? Wrong, but it was like 20,000 employees, and then Everlane was 2,000 employees, and the next one is like 200 employees, the next one is 20, right? And like we work with so many brands who are 10 or 20 people with like 80 million top line because they are using an agency for this, or to your point, a 3PL for that, or right, it's always outside of the business. Do you think let's talk about the discovery part of the top of the funnel is something that needs to be a core skill internal for a brand, or is it something that you can actually outsource in some way, shape, or form?
No. The closer you get to the consumer's heart and wallet, the more you have to own that in-house. So, shipping, the customer just wants the product. Like so you can outsource that. How you leverage Meta and optimize your ads, you can outsource that. But the creative, the heart and soul, that like you're asking your customer to pick your shoes and to wear your logo because it means something. That cannot be outsourced. Just it like that is the soul of the brand. As long as you're selling a brand, if it's a different type of business, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But we're in the business of creating relationships with our customers. And so like all of that has to come, I believe, has to be the immediate hires within the organization, while other things, finance, accounting, maybe we can outsource that to other agencies or firms. But at the core of what we do, design, production, marketing, especially upper funnel, has to come within the brand.
Are you finding that there are new tools or approaches that you're using ideally with AI, but you don't have to go that way, where it's like, it's getting easier for you, not even easier, you're more effective at the things that you should own in-house on executing them?
I mean, I think like, customer service, I think like is good, not great yet with AI. So we still have a team of people who are monitoring things that are not flowing properly. But I think most of the questions that people are asking our customer service team are things that AI can answer. When is my shipment arriving? When did my order go through? Like, how do you size this versus that? And then there's like, fluke things that you need somebody to come in and interject. And then also there's, just copy. I hate to say it, like we do still have copywriters, and like when we're talking about the emotion of the brand, we're still kind of leaning on them to identify, what it is we want to say. But product descriptions of each of the products, the new materials using certain voice, like we throw that into AI, and all the copy we need for like SEO or, product on site, like a lot of that can be managed through AI. Some of the richer storytelling, I think there's still a gap that we're filling and we're solving. Generally, I think, AI has been incredibly helpful for us to scale.
It's interesting.
And then obviously Orita. I mean, we just started working with you guys too, just customer segmentation, like that, and not that it's like a plug for Orita, but it's true. As we're talking about tech platforms that are making things easier, we have a very robust email list, but it's what do you do with it? And how do you could very easily spam all your customers, or you can be very methodical about who gets what when. And, platforms like yours help us understand when is the best time to reach this person so they don't feel like they're being spammed, that their email doesn't go into their spam folder and they actually read it and convert from the email. That's incredibly helpful.
Thank you.
Is it embarrassing
to
hear me talk about your company?
Yeah, I was like, can we just not? Sorry, I'm bad at this part, but thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I was like, I want us to deliver a lot of results before you say nice things, but I appreciate that even the like,
I believe in you.
I know it. The conceit is exactly
I've
right.
heard the customer reviews of other brands that are working with you, so we're good.
Thank you. No, I think the problem set is still the same, which is like everybody has a ton of data, but the question is, what do you do with it? And so your point about yes is like Wizmo, like where's my order? Cool. That does not need a human's intervention.
Right.
And you want your CS team to be dealing with the anomalous or like the really complex things. We think the same thing on the customer success side, right? So like, how do we serve a Birdies and any of our customers? And the question is always like, how do we make it so that our CS org is only handling difficult problems, not stuff that somebody can self-serve, or we could forget self-serve. Like we could proactively fix the issue or proactively notify your team that something is happening that they should be aware of, right? And I think that is like, I don't see AI as a replacement. I see AI as like much more the enabler and like the like allowing us all to do higher order work. Okay, yeah, I don't know. I got a couple last questions for you, and then I'll definitely let you go. Though this has been very fun, and I've got a bunch of notes for myself. All right, so going back to like this is a new chapter for Birdies, right? And you kind of talked about like all the benefits and all like the pros and cons, obviously. Like, what are you most excited about for the next phase of the brand?
I mean, we've barely scratched the surface of what we can do. I think everything was growing so fast and relatively easily. The first 5 years from 2015 to 2020 were magical. And then COVID hit. And oh my gosh, it was like every problem under the sun. Our factories were shutting down. Our shipments were being stuck in the Long Beach port. I mean, literally, we were like, do we drive down there and do we get our shoes ourselves? Making the decisions to airship them, which was cutting into our margins, to people wanting to work from home versus the creativity and the magic of being in the office. Like, that was so hard. And I think I realized like it feels like a great safety net to be within a broader organization that has a bigger, stronger foundation to weather storms as they come, because they will. And also just have this tremendous institutional knowledge in areas that I could get to. It would just take me a lot longer. And what's the point of that when we can kind of work together? And so if I can bring the magic of Birdies and the community and the guardrails of the product, and this organization can help support it in the other areas that frankly aren't as close to hitting the consumer's heart, but more just structurally helping us grow and scale with a stronger foundation, like the world is our oyster. I mean, footwear could be just the beginning of what we do. We really want to make her feel and look her best. And where else does that show up? In the home, outside of the home, there's so many extensions here. And so I'm very bullish on Birdies. I think it's just a matter of like when and where and how we get there over the next decade.
Thank you. That's great. All right. I'm putting you on the spot because you've given a lot of advice, but I'm curious, like you've had this incredible founder journey, right? And it is very rare. I know a lot of people like myself who've run brands and like had the highs and then had the very, very, very low lows and like never came back out of it. But you guys were wildly successful, and obviously
let's be clear. I've had many of the lows. I
understand, but like most people, get stuck there.
Crash and
And
burn. Yeah.
we're proud and we get much grayer hair than you and all the things, but that's fine. The question I have though is like, you talk to a lot of brand operators all the time. What's the like one or two pieces of advice? If there's anything, either double clicking on something you said earlier or anything new that you would definitely share with kind of that person who's building that next brand.
It's, your perseverance and your community who you surround yourself with is just so critical because, the first few years building Birdies, I thought my job as a founder and CEO was to avoid the landmines. And anytime I'd hit a landmine, I would just hate myself. I suck. How could I do this? I'm not smart. Other founder CEOs like would never, hit this problem. I'm so stupid. And then, it finally dawned on me that my role as a founder and CEO is not to necessarily avoid the landmines, although obviously you try to, but when you hit the landmines, because you will, and sometimes more frequently than at other times, it's how do you handle them? Can you take that deep breath and like not let it kill you and figure out, okay, who's my person, my Rolodex that I call for this particular problem that would be just amazing to talk to about this? How do I keep my composure? How do I make sure that I'm healthy enough that I can sleep through the night without waking up in the middle of the night with a panic attack, which, happens a lot. And then not giving up. I think like most companies are just, just a few moments of like, I'm not giving up away from reaching that success. But I think it just over time, it becomes so hard and so challenging that it's just easy to just say like, I give up and don't give up.
Bianca, that was awesome. Thank you. Perseverance community. I love the idea of like, yes, try to avoid the landmines, but it's very much about the growth mindset and not considering it a failure and saying, cool, how do we learn, get smarter, get better? This is great.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right.
if
If you ever want an executive coaching role,
Yeah, no. My best executive coaching roles where I've learned the most have been in my lean in circles and in YPO, which is a very similar model because you meet with these folks once a month who are also building companies and CEOs. And I think one of the things you learn is, yeah, it's really hard and you're going to hit these problems. And we all do. And so how do you navigate them? And so if you're not a part of one of these circles or have this like tight group of folks around you that are also in building mode, find those people quickly because it'll make things so much easier and so much more fun.
I love it. One of my best friends is a founder of a company called Magoosh, which is an ed tech company, right? GRE, GMAT, like really affordable, just an amazing company. Couldn't be more different from any of the businesses I've started. But having the person who knows me and cares about me and is listening to like the problems that we have with the business, but is not emotional about the business
Right.
and can be that sounding board.
Yeah.
I did Visbridge back in the day, but to your point, whether
Right.
it's YPO or Lean In or anything, just having those trusted people who are helping is such sage advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
My last question is an easy one.
Okay.
Where can people find you? Do we just go to birdies.com and buy all the shoes, or is there any other place that we should look for you?
Birdies.com, obviously Birdies on social. We just launched our fall campaign. It's a minute-long campaign called She's Magic, and it's very much a testament to women. We're magical creatures. We're able to do so much in our days. And so there's these 4 different vignettes going through her day in our shoes and how, we sort of just elevate her every day. It's those everyday moments that can be annoying or tricky, but in Birdies, you feel beautiful. You feel like a hug on your feet, and you are the magic that makes everything else perfect, even when it's not. So go to our website, go to our social media to check out this She's Magic campaign and shop us at birdies.com.
Bianca, thank you. This was truly such a joy. Like so many notes
Thanks,
and
Aaron.
so many follow-up questions that I'm going to bug you with, but I think I'll leave it here for right now.
Thank you for the opportunity, Aaron. I appreciate it. Bye.
Hi, I'm Aaron Schwartz, co-founder and co-CEO of Orita.ai. We build AI customer segmentation for some of Klaviyo's biggest brands like Oriana, Spanx, Caraway, Third Love, True Classic, Run Beauty, and on and on. Brands come to us to help find untapped revenue, improve their click rate, drive away mean bots, and a bunch more. You can learn more or get a free customer engagement audit at Orita.ai.